So this is the second door. This is actually going to be the front door to my property, the outside door. So the property has oak doors throughout, other than the door I replaced you saw a couple of weeks ago, and the front door, both painted, both softwood. So finally time to replace those. What's going to be slightly different about this is the way I'm constructing this door, the front and the back. I'm trying to kind of emulate that medieval vibe that you see, and I've come up with this idea using the floating tenons and a half lap joint so that I don't have to have any ledge or bracing on the back. Sometimes a medieval door is made up of two layers, vertical boards on the front and horizontal on the back, but I actually wanted this to look really nice front and back, and this gives it the ability to expand and contract without cupping, and looks really good in the end. So the next part of this door is that it's going to have an arched or slightly curved top, that kind of medieval style. Sometimes I do like a Tudor arch. This one is a very slight curve. So it's all about making templates and then using bearing guided routers and a large bearing guided spindle molder cutter. Once again, this project is using wood that I have in stock, and it's very, very rustic English oak. I quite like that. It takes a lot of repairing, but it gives it loads of character when it's finished. So this is just putting CA glue in. So first stage after all the milling is to put in the half lap joints, and then you'll see that's what I'm doing here, and then the next section is going to be cutting these floating tenons. So just do very rough passes here with the bandsaw, and then I'll be making. I've done a video on this before. This is a really good way of adding like the bead. They call it like a bead and butt door. This bead is being added by the cutter block that's in my HKC. I actually bought this from White Hill Tools. Again, because I'm going for the rustic look, I'm using my brush machine here rather than a sander, just to remove some of the kind of sappy wood and raise the grain a bit. It's quite effective, but it is quite a slow process. This is just hard wax oil with Morel's light walnut stain added, just to give it that kind of aged effect. So because it's quite thick, the kind of header, the arch over the doorway, I'm making it in two sections, and then obviously there's going to be like a 20mm relief gap for the door to close into. Lots of small passes here. The rebate is 20mm, as I said, for the door to sit in, but the depth I'm cutting is about 3mm at a time, just to keep it nice and safe. It's a bit slow, but if you take off too much, it can be very difficult, especially on the ends. So the bearing I'm using at the moment gives me a 20mm rebate. And then that can't quite make its way all the way through, obviously, because there'll be nothing to reference. So I then swap it out for a 0 clearance bearing, so that we're just cutting flush. These are some large handmade door studs. They're obviously just for show in this case, and I did have some custom hinges made that are almost the whole width of the door, just to give it that real like medieval vibe. One thing to point out, this doorway, as you can see, is solid, like a solid old oak frame. It is well not square. So I did have to cut lots of slithers and packing. And unfortunately, I didn't get all of that videoed, but most of it you should see. At the end of the last video, you could see me cutting a little notch along the bottom of the door. That's because this threshold has one of those door stops, so that fits over the little notch, the rebate, and then on top of that, I'll put right at the end, you'll see me screw a little weather bar on, and then I'll disguise the screws with some oak pegs. So I did lots of this. This is me cutting these little kind of fillets to go around the door frame, and then on the inside of the door frame, I'll get some pictures and show you how I then made a nice kind of internal frame, very basic to make it look as if it's always been there. But underneath that is lots of these fillets to try and square up the frame. Fitting these door stops on the outside and the mouldings, that was pretty straightforward. It was the internal coverings that took most of the time to try and make it look as if it's always been there, and you know, trying to square it up the best you can on this situation so that the door has not got any drafts. The old one had lots of drafts. So the other thing was I had to put, unfortunately I couldn't rebate in draft excluder. I usually use Aquamat 21, which is really good. I couldn't do that here because I had to pack this frame and make it, you know, make the door fit the opening and then adjust the frame so that it all fits. So that was a shame, but it is pretty much airtight now. The only issue with the stick-on sort of door seals is that over time, sometimes they can go brittle, but you know, it's not the end of the world, and you know, you can just stay on top of it. So I found this lock on Etsy. It's just kind of like a mock vintage lock. I was going to get the original lock remade, but getting the keys cut these days is around about 160 to 200 quid, and it's quite an old lock. This is a really nice solid rim lock. Okay, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really pleased with the new door. I've been here about 8 years. I've been wanting to do this door for ages. You can imagine I love a nice oak door. The old one, not only drafty, but it's really sort of letting down the place with the paint. So yeah, that's it. See you all in the next one. Thanks for your support.